Hey y'all, let's check and correct our answers to the basic skills number 3 practice. Remember, you will have a basic skills assessment, one of those green paper quizzes, in class tomorrow, and it looks just like this. Again, it will be 30 points and it will be in Delta Math. But because it looks just like this, I am confident that you are going to do very well on it. So let's get started checking our answers. For number 1, we have determine if the quotient is positive or negative. I'm going to zoom in here. And in number 1, I see that I have negative 48 divided by negative 6. Well, when my signs are the same, my quotient is going to be positive. Okay, in number 2, we're still determining if our quotient is positive or negative. And I have negative 10 divided by 5. So I have a negative integer divided by a positive integer. The signs are different, so our quotient is negative. Okay, moving on to number 3, we're still doing the same thing, determine if the quotient is positive or negative. And we have 18 divided by negative 6. So positive integer divided by a negative integer. So the signs are different, so my answer is going to be negative. And the last one, determine if the quotient is positive or negative, we have 44 divided by 4. So hopefully you see that both of those are positive. Because the signs are the same, our quotient is going to also be positive. So remember, whenever the signs are the same, the quotient is positive. Whenever the signs are different, the quotient is negative. Okay, moving on to number 5. Find the quotient. So we're just simply going to divide. 24 divided by 3. Well, both of them are positive, so I know that my answer needs to be positive. And 24 divided by 3 is 8. So my answer is 8. Now, I could use a related multiplication fact to figure that out. So I could say that 3 times some number equals 24. Well, what would that number be? That number would be 8. Okay, so you can use multiplication facts to help you. Okay, moving on to number 6, find the quotient. We have negative 120 divided by negative 10. Well, in this case, I have a negative integer divided by another negative integer. So what do I know about my quotient? Hopefully you know it's going to be positive. And we know that negative 120 divided by negative 10 is going to be positive 12. Okay, moving on to number 7, find the quotient. Here we have negative 56 divided by 7. My signs are different here. One's negative and one's positive. So before I do any math, I know that my answer has to be negative. And I'm going to ask myself, 7 times what number equals negative 56? And whatever number I would write in that box is my answer. And I know that 7 times negative 8 equals negative 56. So my answer then is negative 8. And in the last one, number 8, find the quotient. We have 36 divided by negative 9. So here I have a positive integer divided by a negative integer. So I know that my answer has to be negative. Now, what is it going to be? Well, I could use multiplication to help me. Negative 9 times what number equals 36? And I know that it would be negative 9 times negative 4 that equals positive 36. So my answer has to be negative 4. Okay, moving on, lesson 1-9. Now we're dividing with rational numbers. So in number 9, it says to find the quotient. So I'm first going to rewrite this right here as an improper fraction. So the way I do that is I start at the bottom. 5 times 2 is 10, plus 1 is 11, and it's negative. So negative 11 over 5 divided by, now I'm going to write this whole number as a fraction. So the way we do that is we just put it over 1. So, oops, let's change that back. 3 over 1. So now that they're both in fraction form, I can do keep, change, flip. So I'm going to keep negative 11 over 5. I'm going to change division to multiplication, and I'm going to flip this second fraction here, so it's going to become 1 over 3. Now, before I do any math, what I do notice is that I have one negative fraction and one positive fraction. So what do I know about my answer? My answer has to be negative. So now I'm going to see if anything reduces. I like to check. So 5 and 1, those don't reduce. 11 and 3, those don't reduce either. So we're just going to multiply across. 11 times 1, that's going to be 11. And then 5 times 3, that's 15. I like to ask myself at this stage, does that reduce any further? Nope, I don't need to write it in a different form. So negative 11 over 15 is my answer. Okay, moving on to number 10. Find the quotient. We have negative 4/5 divided by negative 2/5. So what I notice here is that they're both negative. So since they're both negative, I'm kind of just going to forget that those negatives are even there because I know that my answer has to be positive. So we also have two fractions, so we can go ahead and start with keep, change, flip. So I'm going to keep 4/5. I'm going to change division to multiplication, and I'm going to flip this fraction here. So it's going to become 5 over 2. Okay, so now we are ready to multiply, but let's see if we can reduce anything first. 5 and 5. Well, I can reduce those to ones. 5 goes into 5 one time. 5 goes into 5 one time. Let's check the other direction. 4 and 2. Is there a number that goes into both of those? Yeah, 2 goes into both of those. 2 goes into 4 2 times, and 2 goes into 2 one time. So now that I'm all reduced, I am ready to multiply. We know that 2 times 1 is 2, and then 1 times 1 is 1. 2 over 1 simplifies to simply 2. So our answer here is 2. Okay, moving on to number 11. Find the quotient. So I'm first going to rewrite this with division instead of this really big complex fraction. So right there where I just drew that orange line, that's where our division symbol goes. So we have negative 2/3 divided by 1 and 5/6. Now let's go ahead and rewrite this as an improper fraction. So the way I do that is I work my way clockwise. Oops. 6 times 1 is 6 plus 5 is 11. So I have negative 2/3 divided by 11 over 6. Now we're going to do keep, change, flip. They're both in fraction form, so we're ready for keep, change, flip. What am I going to keep? I'm going to keep the very first thing. So negative 2/3. I'm going to change division to multiplication, and I'm going to flip this one here. So it's going to become 6 over 11. Now, we're going to see if anything reduces. So let's start with 2 and 11. Nope, those don't reduce. What about 3 and 6? Well, they do have a common factor. 3 will go into both of those. 3 goes into 3 one time, and 3 goes into 6 2 times. So now that I'm all reduced, I'm ready to multiply. And before I multiply, I am going to note that I have a negative times a positive. What do I know about my answer? Hopefully you said because they have different signs, the answer has to be negative. So I'm going to go ahead and put that negative sign right there. So now we're ready to multiply. We multiply the top numbers together. 2 times 2 is 4. And then 1 times 11 is 11. So negative 4 over 11 is our answer. And we cannot reduce that any further, so we are good. So again, you will have a basic skills assessment tomorrow, and it looks just like this, so study hard.